heard, you're like, I wonder if it applies to this guy. Well, I'm just going to assume it does, and then I won't get burned, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And like, what was I just listening to? They did a study on whether kids that grow up in a bilingual household understand the perspective of other people better because of growing up in that environment. And basically, the experiment that they did is they had like 3 cars. One was big, one was medium, one was small, and then they hid the kid got to see all 3, but the kid could see that the smallest one was hidden from the adult. And so, like, basically, there was 2 in front of them, one was behind a wall, and they knew the adult couldn't see the one. And these kids were like 3 or 4 or whatever. And so the adult would say, hey, wow, those are cool cars. Can I have the smallest one? And they found that most kids, like 80% of the kids that grew up in a bilingual household would try to give them the middle one because they understood from their perspective that was the smallest one.
Right.
But the kids that grew up in just a single language household would almost all the time try to give them the third one that the other person didn't see. And like they said, it was really odd to find the findings that like because of growing up in, having to relay messages or to be able to try to understand what they're trying to say in a different language, even though it didn't sync up all the way with the other language, that they started to look at the other person's perspective way more often than the person that grew up in a completely homogenous single language household. So anyway, the reason I found that interesting is because that comes very true with sometimes the way that we raise our kids in a Christian household. You know what I'm saying? It's like we're not asking you to accept their other people's perspective as gospel. We're just asking you to realize that they don't see the third car. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
They don't see it. And so when you try to explain the third car or judge them for saying, why don't you understand the third car, you got to realize they don't. It's still behind a wall for them, and they never saw it in the first place. And so like the some of the stereotypes and the judgments that we've made, for years, are all because we weren't willing to sit in the chair and realize that they didn't even know that third car was there.
Right.
So anyway, it was a pretty interesting study.